Welcome back to Star or Shovelware, my name's Luke, and in today's review we're going to be checking out a game called Roundguard on the Nintendo Switch, and this is one that released a couple of months ago but I somehow managed to overlook, perhaps because of its thumbnail, which I have to admit makes it look like a kid's game and not something that I'd be into. However, after receiving an email about Roundguard's latest update, I found out that the game is essentially Peggle with roguelike elements, and I absolutely loved Peggle and I'm a big fan of roguelikes, so I decided to give the game a go. So without further ado then, let's get into this review and see what's what, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and want to see more. So the story side of Roundguard doesn't really play a huge part in the game, but it's used to set the scene and basically concerns an assault on Castle Springbottom by all manner of nasties. The king is missing, which is never a good sign, and so it falls to you to go and find him, descending or ascending the castle's floors, whatever it may be, and collecting gold, because why not? Now, the intro to the story is presented to you in text form by this rather gentry looking elf chap, but throughout the game you'll get encounters with various other characters and have a bit of a natter with them, with there being some pretty amusing dialogue in the game, and while these interactions don't do anything to really further the storyline, I like the game's colourful cast of characters and enjoyed them nonetheless. So if you've never actually played Peggle, the game is essentially styled after the classic Japanese arcade games known as pachinko. Like pachinko and Peggle, gameplay in Roundguard involves you firing a ball, or in this case one of 4 hero classes, out of a catapult and into a board full of pegs, where you then bounce off the pegs, making your way down to the bottom of the screen before repeating the process. Now, the objective in Peggle was to destroy a certain amount of pegs to earn enough points in order to progress to the next stage, but Roundguard does things a little bit differently. Instead of having a certain number of balls with which to complete levels, in Roundguard your character has health points which you need to maintain, and the game will only end when you lose all of them or beat its end boss. Now, there are 4 character classes in the game, these being the Warrior, Rogue, Mage and Druid, and each comes with its own attributes, abilities and particular style of play. The Rogue, for instance, has the double jump ability, which allows you to change your direction of travel to get round obstacles blocking your path, while the Mage has access to a variety of different spells, including the lightning spell, which shocks everything in a line between the Mage and 2 lightning bugs which wander up and down the sides of the arena. There are a ton of different abilities that each class can gain access to though, with each run starting you off with a random one, and I really like the variety that the character classes brought to the game, with each having their own strengths and weaknesses, and some of them having more complex mechanics than others. Now, getting into the actual gameplay, the objective in a standard run is to work your way through a procedurally generated series of rooms, and the layouts of the rooms themselves are also procedurally generated, containing particular sets of enemies based on the type of room you've entered. In order to actually beat a room, you have to kill off all of the enemies in it, either by bumping into them directly or damaging them with your spells and abilities, after which you'll receive a reward and get to select which room you move on to next based on whatever's linked to your current room. Now, the basic mechanics in Roundguard are kept relatively simple, so the game is pretty easy to pick up and play, though there is still a decent amount of depth and strategy to the game. To the left of the screen you'll find your character's stats, including HP, MP which is used to activate abilities, and below them the current XP and gold. You also have your character's attack power next to the cute little image of them, and along the left side you'll find the details of each enemy, including their health and attack stats. When it comes to the actual variety of the enemies, it's pretty decent. Each of them presents their own challenges for you to overcome, and they include things like melee enemies, ranged enemies, and ones that don't attack but help other enemies, and alongside standard enemies you'll encounter bosses and mini-bosses, all of which have their own unique room mechanics for you to contend with. Now, attacking enemies is as simple as bouncing into them, at which point your character and the enemy will trade blows. Health is deducted from each of you depending on your attack ratings, though you can of course utilise your abilities to deal damage from a distance. The spikes along the bottom of the screen will also damage you, that is unless you're able to land safely on the comfy looking cushion which makes its way back and forth, but you're able to replenish part of your health and mana pools by breaking the red and blue potions dotted about the arena. Now, in addition to the basic combat mechanics, you have things like poison, which causes you or your enemies to take damage after every turn, or the shock effect from the mage's lightning, which also triggers at the end of your turn. And then there's things like the enrage buff, which causes the affected party to deal double damage, or weakness, which causes them to take double damage. And there are a bunch of other buffs, debuffs and status effects thrown into the mix, which I felt really added a good amount of depth to gameplay and often requires you to think before you fire. Now, as you progress through the castle on your way to save the king, you'll earn XP from killing enemies, which will go towards levelling you up, increasing your health and mana pools. You'll also earn equipment or skills at the end of each level, or from bosses or treasure rooms, with most of them being randomly selected from their designated item pools, and these include things like weapons, armour, skill books and trinkets, and the stats of each of these are also randomly generated, with them often having secondary effects and increasing in power the further you get into the game. Now, a standard run in Roundguard consists of 3 separate chapters of increasing difficulty, and after completing the game once, there's now a new Encore mode which adds an additional set of random rules to dungeons, further increasing the level of challenge they offer. There are also relics you can unlock which can alter the game in different ways, making it easier or harder and adding additional mechanics to the mix, and all of these different things just add to the game's replayability and really help to keep things interesting and challenging. Of course, as with any roguelike though, there are elements of luck to runs, as you never know what enemies you're going to come up against or how good the items you'll find are going to be. But all in all, to me the game felt pretty balanced and I had a really good time playing it. And I'd go so far as saying that in some ways, it's even better than Peggle in my opinion. Now, repeated playthroughs will see you unlocking new trinkets, items, rooms and relics, which once again expand on existing gameplay and add to replayability. But in addition to the standard runs, you also have daily and weekly runs, which restrict you to playing a specific character and implement a unique set of rule sets for you to contend with. Completing these challenges though will earn you puzzle pieces, which in turn will unlock even more rewards for standard game runs, and both standard and weekly/daily runs have their own online leaderboards, offering just another little bit of incentive to keep on playing. Overall though, Roundguard is a great little roguelike, and one of the most unique spins on the genre that I've seen to date. It has quite a casual approach to gameplay, though like I said, there are plenty of mechanics to give it some depth, and if you enjoyed the Peggle games and are looking for something similar but altogether different, then I highly recommend you give this one a go. So I have to admit that my initial impressions of the game's visuals were not the most positive. They have a kind of cartoony aesthetic to them, which reminded me a lot of those found in cheap mobile games, but thankfully the gameplay more than makes up for whatever it is that I disliked about its visuals. On the audio side of things, we get some decent sound effects, which include that ever so pleasant ascension of notes reminiscent of Peggle, which occur whenever you destroy a large number of pegs. The music in the game, whilst not being particularly memorable, is fitting for the gameplay and enjoyable enough to play along to, though unfortunately the final shot victory music is nowhere near as epic or dramatic as Peggle's Ode to Joy, which I have to say is one thing that I dearly miss at times. So performance wise, the game runs solid on the Switch, and I don't recall having any issues when it comes to frame rate or performance. So far as problems go, there are also very little that I found to criticise about the game. I found that depending on the enemies that you encounter, sometimes you'll find yourself with very little health after only a couple of rooms, which can result in some very short runs, though certain relics and strategies can help prevent this. While Encore mode contains some new variants of the end of chapter bosses, there did only appear to be a few of these, though there are a good number of sub-bosses, so I feel they won't get too repetitive too quickly. Lastly, whilst levels feature room layouts and enemy types bring variety, I would have liked to have seen more environmental hazards or just some unique features in levels, like the wind which blows during the ice boss fight, as I feel these would have really helped to keep things exciting as well as adding a whole lot more variety to runs. When all's said and done though, I did have a great time playing this one, and I'll definitely be dipping back into it every once in a while whenever I need a quick peggle fix, and when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Roundguard 4 out of 5 stars. If like me you enjoyed Peggle and are looking for a new pachinko-like game to get stuck into, then Roundguard should definitely scratch that itch. It offers a bit more of a challenge with its roguelike mechanics, but it's still a very casual play and should prove accessible to most audiences. And so that about wraps up this review of Roundguard on the Nintendo Switch. As always, if you enjoyed it, drop the video a like to help with the algorithm. Let me know if, like me, it flew under your radar and whether you're now going to be checking it out in the comments section below. And if you watch my content regularly but are not yet subscribed to the channel, then please consider doing so. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.